Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at the sine, cosine, and tangent functions when looking at the Texas Instrument, the TI-30X OGT approved calculator. Now this topic is going to deal specifically with the OGT. If you are taking the OAA, if you're in 3rd through 8th grade, then you will not be looking at this topic yet. So maybe in a couple years. So let's go ahead and jump into this. This is not, I will preface that this is not going to be an intense look at sine, cosine, and tangent. It's just going to show you how to use these buttons or how to set up the problem, use these this calculator with these functions. So taking a look at an example, if we have, for example, here we have example 1, notice we have a right triangle denoted by this little square in the corner here. We know an angle, this angle is 42 degrees. The opposite side of that angle is 5 units long, and the question mark denotes this is what we're actually trying to find. So this would denote the hypotenuse, sort of the longest side. Now, you may have seen something referring to Sohcahtoa. It's just a way of remembering how to set up the problems. S stands for sine, O stands for opposite, H stands for hypotenuse. So if you're dealing with each one of those, or even if you're looking for one of those particular things, then you're going to use that particular formula. So in this case, we have opposite and hypotenuse is what we're trying to find of the angle. So since opposite and hypotenuse are what we are dealing with, we're going to use sine in this case. So if you set up the problem, it's going to look something like this. Sine of 42 equals 5 over x. So 5 denoting the opposite, x denoting the hypotenuse. So to continue with that, you'd have to refer back to what you know about proportions. We're going to go ahead and put sine of 42 over 1 and set up a proportion. So we have a fraction on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. Then what we can do, since we have an unknown, we can cross multiply and divide. So we'd have sine of 42 times x. I'm going to put that in parentheses. And my handwriting is probably not going to be the best here. And then the 1 times 5 just gives you a 5. And if you remember the next step, you're trying to get the x by itself. So we are going to divide both sides by the sine of 42, which will give us x equals 5 divided by sine of 42. So now we're getting to where we're going to use the calculator. So sine of 42. So this is the problem, how we would set up the problem. Now let's go ahead and turn the calculator on and then plug this problem in. So we'd start with 5 divided by, you have the sine button here. Notice you have the sine, cosine, and tangent buttons. And similarly, you have the inverse of each above those particular buttons. So we want the sine, and we're going to type in 42. Just type in 42, and you can close that parentheses, and then go ahead and push enter or equals. So you get 7.47 and so on and so forth. Now, you do want to make sure that you round it to whatever is being asked in the problem. So if we were to round this to the nearest hundredth, we'd say 7.47 units in this case. So 7.47 units. So let's go ahead and write that. 7.47 units. Okay, now you probably noticed that there is also, let me go ahead and grab my magic pen here. You have the inverse of each right here. So you have sine to the negative first power is what it looks like. So you have those negative ones there. That means the inverse. What those are used for is when you're actually trying to find the angle, not the side length. So let's go ahead and delete this information. Okay, so looking at example number 2, what you would notice is that we're actually trying to find this particular angle. Again, this is a right triangle. Trying to find this angle. We have the opposite side. We know the opposite side is 3 units long, and we know the adjacent side is 7 units long. So we know the opposite and adjacent. So if we jump up here, which one has an O and an A denoting opposite and adjacent? That would be this one, TOA. So we're using the tangent function here. So if we set this up, since we're trying to find the angle measure, we're going to use the inverse tangent. So we'd have inverse tangent of x is equal to 3/7. So let's jump over here to the calculator. It's already on. To get to the inverse tangent function, we're first going to push second and then the tangent. Notice when you look at the screen, you have the -1 denoting the inverse tangent. Then go ahead and type in the 3 divided by 7. Go ahead and close the parentheses, push enter, and then you will have the angle measure. So in most cases you're going to be asked to round. Let's go ahead and round this one to the nearest tenth. So okay, so if we rounded that to the nearest tenth in this case, we are going to get 23.2. So let's go ahead and write our answer here. So you have 23.2 degrees for this angle measure. And that is how you use sine, cosine, and tangent and their inverse functions when looking at the TI-30X calculator.